Hi everyone, my name is Anita Ladhani. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and an energy practitioner. And today I want to talk about the keys to a successful relationship. So before we do that, let's define what I consider successful. Successful is basically, we're not just talking something that's been a long-term relationship, but also a relationship where two people are not just together, but they're actually for a long time, but they're actually happy together. They're joyful together. They still like each other. They still respect each other. They still want to be with each other in spite of how long it's been and what they've gone through. And so, as many of you know, I'm happily divorced. And I say happily divorced because I just got tired of apologizing, or not apologizing, explaining to people when I would say I'm divorced. I mean, it's been like 15 years now, 16 years almost. So it's, lifetime ago. But they would say, oh, I'm so sorry, and it just got easier to say I'm happily divorced. So, and been in and out of relationships. I'm a therapist. I work with a lot of people, couples, talk to a lot of people as well. And I'm just really curious about, what makes a relationship last, right? And so what I'm realizing is that, I know what brings people together. What brings people together is, for men, it's usually they have to be physically sort of attracted to you. For women, it's a little different. We'd have to like the person. Respect is important. Love is important. Open and honest communication is important. But then what keeps a couple together? Because any long-term relationship that I have studied, that I've spoken to both parties, I've spoken to one party, long-term, happy, successful relationship, here's the key. They have all had issues. They've all had speed bumps, including infidelity, right? Including some serious, issues in terms of, substance abuse. One partner was drinking too much or doing stuff, or failure in business or cheating on someone. The key, and they're still together. So what's the difference between them and between people like me who are divorced? What's the difference? Here's the difference. The difference is the two parties involved, whoever is at fault and whoever's not at fault, are you willing to work things out? Are you willing to stick things through? Are you willing to, number one, acknowledge that there's a problem? Are you willing to take responsibility that you may possibly, be the person causing damage to this relationship? And are you willing to do what needs to be done in terms of changing, getting help, making amends? If you're willing to do that, those are the relationships that I see that survive the ups and downs of relationships, because the one common denominator of any relationship is you're going to have issues. Doesn't matter whether it's, and I've named a few, right? Financial issues, infidelity, failure in, whatever. Now, here's what is not acceptable, okay? And this is where you have to decide, and this is where that it's a really thin line where there's abuse involved. So if there's physical abuse, if there's emotional abuse, if there's mental abuse, if there's any kind of domestic violence, and domestic violence isn't always just hitting, right? Domestic violence is also just mental, verbal abuse. And if the person is not changing and it continues, then you need to make a decision and walk away. Okay, that's a given. A lot of couples also stay together because they have kids together. So let me tell you something. As a happily divorced mother my boys are now 17 and 21, almost 18. My kids were 2 and 5 when I got divorced. Okay, so been there, done that. And not just as a mom, but as a professional therapist who I work with hundreds of kids. I assess and evaluate kids in my full-time profession. When the parents are not getting along, it absolutely negatively impacts the kids. Now, whether they're divorced, it impacts the kids. Whether they're together and they stay together and they don't get along, it impacts the kids. So your marriage impacts, your relationship impacts the kids regardless if your marriage or relationship is in trouble. So what do you do? Because again, like I just said, every relationship is going to have ups and downs, right? I think the key is to be able to get help and to have an honest, open conversation and work through it. I think the best thing you can do for your children is to model what it takes to make a marriage happen. Okay? I think, everyone is all excited about the wedding, but no one really sticks it out through the marriage, because marriage is hard work, like I just talked about. So if you're having issues with your spouse, get help. If they don't want to go get therapy, at least you start getting therapy, right? And you start working on yourself. Because the other thing I find very interesting is that anytime someone reaches out to me, they'll be like, well, I need my husband to change, and I need my wife to change, and I need them to do this and this. And I'm like, well, forget it, that they're not sitting in my office asking for help. You're the one. So why don't we just start with working with you, because we can't control what anybody else does. So again, the key to a successful relationship is forgiveness, forgiving each other. Do not hold the past, because every one of us makes mistakes, guys. Every one of us, okay? Forgive each other. Be accommodating to each other. Don't bring up the past. But the key is the person willing and wanting and doing, changes in their lives, because they value the relationship just as much as you do. There is no perfect person out there. I have a nice laundry list of what I want. Not going to find it, because guess what? I'm not the perfect so-called person for whoever, right? So everyone's got flaws. It's fine. But I know that for me, what's important are ethics, values, a decent person. So my list matters. And then I go shopping out with my list. So I'm going to find people on my list, but I'm always going to end up compromising, because guess what? They may be a wonderful person, but they may be a little, not of the same religion. They may not be of the same physical, type that I want. They may be too skinny or too short or too fat, or whatever the case might be. They might not have the right degree. They might not have the right bank balance. So you have to figure out what's important to you. But yeah, the key is forgiving each other, willing to work things through, riding the roller coaster of what is a marriage and a relationship, because that's the only way. And it's, of course, easier to, in the short term, walk out and quit and say, I'm out. I don't want to deal with this. It's much harder to feel the pain. It's much harder to get help. It's much harder to stick it out with the person, for better or for worse. We don't quite do that anymore. We're out the first sign of trouble. So unless there's abuse happening, different story. But there's no, even when there's abuse happening, I think as long as a person is willing to stop and change and you can do something about it, fine. But I've seen marriages where people have cheated and all the things I've talked about, and they're still together, they're forgiving each other, there's substance abuse, whatever, and couples get through it, and they're able to have a good, joyful relationship. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. Love and light. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.